Alrighty, welcome everybody. I guess we're ready to kick off the August 5th IRC tag meeting. And Angela, if you want to introduce real quick and I'll kick off roll call. It looks like we got a quorum working at the moment.
Excuse me. All right, so welcome everyone to the meeting. We'll start by doing a roll call of the tag members.
Alrighty, Angela Haupt,
Here.
Dan Young, not seen online at the moment. Jenny Look,
Here.
thank you. Quinn Tai, I'm not seeing online. Patrick Hanks,
Here.
thank you. Ron Perkowicz,
Here.
thank you. Ken Brulette, not seeing online. Josh Mergens, not seeing online just yet. I see Quinn Tai just joined us. Barry Kurth,
Present.
thank you. Justin Crovalho,
Here.
thank you. Mariko Blessing,
Here.
thank you. Jonathan Jones, not seeing online. Leah Summer, not seeing online. Annie O'Rourke, not seeing online. We are sitting with a quorum today, 6 seats represented, and 5 of those seats are needed for a quorum. And I'll turn it back over to you, Angela.
All right, does anyone from the public wish to introduce themselves? Nope.
No hands.
Okay, I don't see any.
Oh.
Yeah,
Did
Dustin,
you have something?
I just came, so I didn't hear my name, but I'm an alternate. I'm only here for 10 o'clock as well, though.
Gotcha. Thank you, Quinn.
Okay, then we will move on to review and approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Right, any opposed? All right, so the agenda is approved as shown. Next, we need to approve our minutes from the last 2 meetings. Do we want to do those as a single or individually? Probably, I guess.
It depends. I guess if we have changes in one desired, we can do them individually, or we can entertain a motion for both at the same time.
All right, well, we'll review both of them and see if anybody has any changes they'd like to see. So these are the Tuesday, July 29th.
Yep. Patrick?
Yeah, I saw that we put in that the work group for R101.2 is in there, but I think I recall, wasn't this also the meeting where we had like other work groups like the EV work group get formed? Do we want to include all the work groups that were made? I'm not, there's a lot of discussion that goes on that item. I'm not sure how much we want to include in the minutes or not.
Yeah, as far as specific work groups, we can add them in there. I'm not opposed to that one. So let me just check out what we got going on here. So we got the work group for 101.2. We had some volunteer stuff for 302.2. Not necessarily a work group formed on that one. So Then we had another okay, and then last one. Okay, I think that I covered all the different volunteer groups broken out at that particular meeting in Jen.
I don't know what meeting it was, but at one of them I volunteered to review lofts versus sleeping lofts.
Okay.
That was the Thursday meeting. That's the
Okay.
next meeting after this.
Okay. And then so that I think that covers pretty much the existing amendments report work group breakouts that we had for the existing amendments report. The significant changes report we didn't review, neither did we get to the IRC proposals. And then we did discuss the stuff that was intended for the executive committee meeting last Friday. And that brings us to the end of that one. Do we want to take these as a bundle, or do we want to hit each individual one with a motion?
Since we made changes to this, let's just do a motion for this specific one.
Okay.
So can I get a motion to approve the minutes as shown?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing no hands. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so these are approved as shown, and we'll move on to last Thursday's meeting minutes.
Got Thursday minutes. Um, And on that one, I don't have the specific section written down. Is the loft section, does anybody recall off the top of their heads, is that 326 and 316? Or
It was actually to look at whether elsewhere in the code, lofts should be changed to sleeping lofts versus having some areas that just say lofts and some sleeping lofts, since there's no longer a lofts section in the IRC. Is that correct, Jen?
Yes, the new section is R315, sleeping lofts in the model code, if you need that.
was it just across chapter 3, or are we looking at the whole code?
The whole code.
Okay. Okay, and then looking at my notes, I don't have any other work groups broken out at our meeting on Thursday last week. My other notes that oh, I see there. But that the link for the EV charger was broken. That has been repaired for today's meeting. But yeah, so we don't have a ton of verbiage drafted out for IRC existing amendments reports for last Thursday.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as shown?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion on these minutes? All right, seeing no hands. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Go back to the agenda. All right, and we have the rest of the existing amendments report to finish up.
Yes, and we left off that one last week at 2904. And let me pull that up here. All right. I don't know, I don't recall specifically if we got into this one last week. Just that we tabled the report at 2904 and resume at the next meeting. So just to recap a little bit, we did talk a little bit about this one, and had some, it's coming back to me now, but in chapter 29 in 5151003, it says that all the chapters that are listed here after the fuel gas code, chapter 25 through 43, are not adopted. But within chapter 29, we have a state amendment in the not adopted section. And getting back to that specific WAC, it does say the provisions for fire sprinklers in single family homes is adopted. Let me get there so I'm not trying to remember it here. 003. So the 2021 edition of the IRC as published by the ICC is hereby adopted by reference with the following additions, deletions, and exceptions, provided that chapters 11 and 25 through 43 of this code are not adopted. Energy code is regulated by 5111R. Plumbing code is regulated by chapter 5156. Electrical code is regulated by chapter 296-46B, or electrical code is adopted by the local jurisdiction. Appendix AF, radon control methods. Appendix AQ, tiny homes. Appendix AWU, dwelling unit fire sprinkler systems, are included in adoption of the International Residential Code. And Appendix AWU, dwelling unit fire sprinkler systems, is a appendix created by the state of Washington that only contains a reference back to 2904.4, which is where we have the amendment that I was showing on screen just a second ago, or sorry, 2904.1. And this section, as drafted into the 2021 code published by ICC, shows all of chapter 29 struck from the book, except for section 2904, which is left in its entirety. And so it's not clear to me whether or not the section 2904 is adopted in its entirety, or if just the appendix AWU and this particular section 2904.1 is the only section that we're supposed to be referencing. So I pause for folks to discuss the recommendation to maintain the amendment that we have in this section, and how people are applying this section across their jurisdictions, or how they feel it should be applied. Jen.
Yeah, I think that it's just incorrect where we're listing the chapters that are or are not adopted. I just think that that should be fixed to include chapter 29, because we do have this section, and it just happens that we've so heavily amended it that we think of it as kind of being struck, but it's not, right? We have this section here. So I think that we just need to correct that to say 29 through 28 and 30 through whatever it was, are not adopted. Chapter 29 is adopted, and then when you go there, you'll find this section.
Angela.
I don't think we want to adopt the rest of 29 though. That's a whole bunch of plumbing that I don't think applies.
I would agree. I think the intent there is to change WAC 5151003 to not necessarily say that chapter 29 is struck, but in our state amendment, we would be looking to only have section 2904 in there. I guess all of chapter 29 is not adopted except for 2904, or language as appropriate. Because looking at our WAC for 2904, we just have the amendment that we have shown on the spreadsheet here. If we get into the code as we have published right now, come on. We have just section 2904. Come on, work with me. And we have all of the language in chapter or section 2904 indicated as adopted, but with no amendments in there. And at our last meeting, it was confirmed that the 2904 section is reminiscent of the 13D sprinkler systems, but is just written in a prescriptive format for the IRC. Mariko.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you just said. Is I think we need to adopt all of 2904, because there are multiple places in the code where it says, installed sprinklers per NFPA 13D or P2904. And if we don't have all of P2904, then there's no direction on how they actually can comply with that.
Right. A question for later on in this report is if we are adopting this and maintaining the amendment in 2904.1.1, is there a need for the appendix AWU, which just looks like that?
Well, or do we just move all of 2904 into the appendix and leave the WAC as we're not adopting 29? But then I think we'd need to do the cleanup throughout the rest of the code to strike wherever it referred to 2904 and just leave it as just AWU. So I mean, there are options, it's just which is the cleanest.
AWU, is that a Washington specific creation or is that in the model code?
That is
Yeah.
just created by Washington.
Okay, so what is the argument for creating this and moving stuff into it versus just leaving it in the chapter where it originates from?
I
Right.
think that if we bring it all to the appendix, it still leaves it optional for the jurisdictions. And if we bring it all to chapter 29, it's adopted for the whole state.
So there are places in the model code that do reference 2904, including the new sleeping loft section, but also that the scoping language that we're working on has that list of kind of oddball uses that are allowed to be built under the IRC, but only if they are sprinklered. And those reference, I think, this appendix, or is it both 2904 or the appendix? I just don't know. Yeah.
Quinn?
Yeah, I don't know what the history is behind the appendix, but that entire language that you're showing is in the model code now. So I don't think we need to adopt the appendix anymore. We just need to in 51003 just say where you have the 25 through 43 not adopted except for 2904 as reference. We just need to add that language.
So we need to clean up 51003, not
Yeah.
necessarily everywhere else. And then when we get to
Correct.
the appendix, probably recommend a striking of that amendment.
That would be my recommendation, yeah. To just clean up 51003 and then just not adopt the appendix anymore.
Okay. Angela?
Yeah, we just have to make sure that, like you said, that doesn't affect anything on how, if it's in an appendix, it's not mandatory and jurisdictions can choose to adopt the sprinklers in the code versus when it's in the body of the code, it's just straight up adopted. So is there anything in it? So like when you go to 2904.1.1, it tells you where you have to put sprinklers in. So if it's adopted in the body of the code, is that saying that every structure, no matter what the jurisdiction says, has to be sprinklered? Because I believe that's why we created the appendix, was in order to make it an option. Quinn?
So Angela, so 51003 doesn't give it as an option. The way it reads is that appendix AWU are included in adoption of the IRC.
Okay.
Agree.
Yeah. And again, is that right? Because I mean, it is, I understand that there are places in the code in the IRC where sprinklers are mandatory, such as, any of the clinic stuff and sometimes in the daycare, or if you make your adult family home larger. So there are areas that no matter whether a jurisdiction has adopted that there are still items required to be sprinklered. And so that's, I guess I'm a little unclear. Patrick?
Should we amend the language to, instead of say sprinklers shall be installed to protect all areas of a dwelling unit, to something like where installed or where required sprinklers shall be installed to protect areas of a dwelling unit.
So something like sprinklers. Something like that as a example.
Yeah, and
Sprinklers where
probably also if we could, I forget the section number, but whatever section says where they're required, maybe point back to there.
Jen?
The way it has happened in my jurisdiction is that when we adopted the Washington Residential Code with our amendments, we actually specifically did not adopt Appendix AWU. So it is kind of working in that way, kind of in reverse. So if you have, I think if you have Appendix AWU and your local jurisdiction adopts it, then sprinklers are required all the time. And we did not adopt it. So then, you know, they would only be required in those other circumstances like a townhouse or what have you. So I think that it's kind of feels like a double negative or something. It's sort of working in reverse, but
Before I call on you, Quinn, I saw Ron, you had a gesture. Were you just emoting a little bit, or was that an attempted hand raise?
Well, I was gonna say something, but listening to Jen's comments there, I'll hold off.
Okay. Quinn.
Yeah, to address Jen, I mean, I feel like that's why we need to clean up 003, because the way that 003 is worded, it kind of makes it sound like every jurisdiction has to adopt AWU because it's adopted by the state, right? And so that's why I feel like we just need to clean this up a little bit. In regards to what you just wrote in there, where required, I feel like that's redundant because the title itself is already required, right? So it's kind of like a redundancy that we're putting in there. So I don't know if that's really needed.
Gotcha. So just for that was only drafted in there as an example. This isn't necessarily a proposed language change. So if we do want to change the language here, we'll need to draft a language change proposal to include in our discussions in the future. So maybe in the interest of keeping this amendment review or the existing amendment review moving, we flagged this one for more work with, I guess, including 5151.003, this section, and potentially other sections that might be rolled in that reference back to this section 2904. Thoughts on flagging that for additional work and potential volunteers to look at these sections to bring back some more perspective on it.
I would be willing to do some additional work on this.
Okay.
I'm happy to help too.
All right, so Barry and Patrick, is there anything that you would need to help facilitate any of this? Okay. Then we'll count on some additional perspective brought back in future meetings, likely for our significant changes stuff. We'll be looking at that. Or we can bring this back as we round this back to the end, but we won't have time for you to do any review before we get to the end of this report today. Okay. And I guess if we're targeting specific sections, we're looking at 5151.003, 2904, and potentially the scope 101.2. just to make sure that any pointers to this section are clear, that it's I believe the intent is that it's not necessarily mandatory that sprinklers be installed, but if they're installed, that they're installed per this section. And that I think that we want to just make sure that that's clear. But we'll bring back that additional perspective in the future. All right, moving on from 2904. Is there anything else we want to discuss on 2904 before moving a little bit further? All right, seeing no hands, nobody unmuting. The remainder of 2904 out 20 chapter 29 is additionally not adopted. The remaining chapters 30 through 43 are not adopted. These include the electrical portions of the code and the remaining plumbing chapters. Getting into chapter 44, our reference standards chapter. We have some amendments in here, and first off, we have the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers. This specific reference document is not included in the model code, and so I don't have any track on if there's updated versions of these out there. But we could entertain a amendment to update to more current versions if they're available. But the recommendation from staff on this one is to maintain the existing amendment. We get into the association, and I don't know if I spelled that wrong because this is in a different language, but the Association Nacional del Certificación y Estándares, which is the National Association of Standardization and Certification, the ANCE. We have an existing amendment updating the current standard, updating to the most current standards in our 2021. The update to the newest standard is not included in the 2024 code. But that is my recommendation, is to update to the most current one out there. And I don't have notes on this one, what that current standard is, but I believe I looked it up. Or else I wouldn't be recommending to update to the newest standard. We get into the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. The recommendation is to update to the newest standards, as in the model code shown in blue there, and then to just verify that the reference to G2414.5.4 is still accurate in our state amendment. The American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE. We update the reference to 62.2-2019, and recommending to maintain that amendment to this section. The American Society for Testing Materials, ASTM, recommending to maintain our amendments in that section. The Canadian Standards Association, CSA, recommending to maintain the state amendment in this section. The Home Ventilating Institute, HVI, recommending to maintain the amendments to these standards. And then the Underwriters Laboratories, recommending to maintain the amendment there as well. And that is all of the amendments in the reference standards chapter. There are a lot of updates in this chapter. It's shown in the significant changes report, mainly just updating everything to the more current standard. Excuse me. And I think there's a couple new additional standards in there that we can take a look at. Anything else on reference standards before moving to chapter 45? Seeing no hands. Brings me to chapter 45. This whole chapter is created by the state of Washington to put in here. It's existing buildings, and the recommendation here is to maintain all of the existing amendments in all the sections here, unless there's some comments from the group here today on chapter 45. All right, it's the end of chapter 45. I didn't see any hands come up during the scroll on that. Last opportunity to, maybe not the last opportunity, but for today to discuss chapter 45. Seeing no hands. That brings us to the appendices. Appendix AA, sizing and capacities of gas piping, contains no amendments. Appendix AB, sizing of venting systems serving appliances equipped with draft hoods, category 1 appliances, and appliances listed for use with type B vents. No existing amendments. Appendix AC, exit terminals of mechanical draft and direct venting systems. No existing amendments in Appendix AC. Appendix AD, recommended procedure for safety inspection of an existing appliance installation. We have no existing amendments. Appendix AE, manufactured housing used as dwellings. No existing amendments within that appendix. Appendix AF, radon control methods, one of the appendices adopted in 5151003. We do have amendments there. And for AF 101, general, the recommendation is to maintain the existing amendment here. For table AF 101, number 1, recommending to maintain the existing amendment there. And then AF 103.1, general, recommending to maintain the existing amendment there as well. Any thoughts on the radon control appendix before moving on? Seeing no hands. Appendix AG, piping standards for various applications, no existing amendments. Appendix AH, patio covers, no existing amendments. Appendix AI, private sewage disposal, no existing amendments. Appendix AJ, existing buildings and structures, no existing amendments. Appendix AK, sound transmission, no existing amendments. Appendix AL, permit fees, no existing amendments. Appendix AM, home daycare R3 occupancy, no existing amendments. Appendix AN, venting methods, no existing amendments. Appendix AO, automatic vehicular gates, no existing amendments. Appendix AP, sizing of water piping systems, no existing amendments within that one. Then brings us to Appendix AQ, tiny houses. In here, Jen.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of suggestions for changes here based on my lofts versus sleeping lofts research. So I don't know if you want to get into all that right now. It'll probably be a lengthy discussion or table this whole thing.
So you're saying that are you prepared to talk about it today? I mean, I don't see any reason why we couldn't
Yes.
talk about that as we go through. Are we just targeting the sections that reference lofts and things like that, or did you have more input on sections outside of those?
It all is to do with lofts. Yeah, it's all to do with lofts. I mean, just the one thing is, so these 3 definitions that we've struck here and said go to chapter 2, basically we were just borrowing these in order to create that new loft section. So instead of creating a duplicate definition in chapter 2, we stole them from here. So now, for example, loft, we can go ahead and strike that as a definition because we have the sleeping loft replaces it, but then we have to put it back here. So these things are a little bit, intertwined. So that's just
Gotcha.
one example. I do want us to have a discussion about egress roof access window because we also tried to include that with the rest of the code, but we didn't quite do all the work that would take. And then a discussion around the ceiling height in a loft and the guards. But essentially the too long don't read is I'm suggesting we actually repeal all of our amendments here, as far as put the definitions back, that kind of thing.
As far as just the definitions, but not the rest of the amendments within this section?
So like the one tiny house, a dwelling unit, like we can leave that. And then I don't know that we want to include sleeping loft because again, a tiny house has a loft that's distinct for the tiny house. So I don't think we would want to keep sleeping loft. There's no definition for sleeping loft in this appendix. So then again, we muddy the water by trying to, yeah. So I think we just need to maybe go through them, but it's going to be kind of a lengthy discussion.
Well, I mean, that's what we're here for, is to make sure that we have those discussions and we're not rushing through it. Angela.
I'm just wondering, so I didn't have a chance to fully look through the email that you had sent to Dustin yesterday or the day before, Jen. But I'm wondering if instead of sort of trying to go through this in this format, if it would be easier for people to see and understand what we're talking about if maybe you created a proposal type of a situation where you showed what you think the language should be. Does that make sense?
Sure, like put it all into an actual code proposal format.
Yeah, because does that make sort of some sense instead of trying to be like, okay, well, we have loft over here, but we don't over here, and then this, and then people are kind of, even I'm bouncing around a little bit as far as just trying to then go, okay, wait, what are we, really talking about? If maybe it was put in more of, especially for this section, put into a code proposal where we could see the entire appendix and what you think it should be.
Okay, so I could just, have all of the, yeah, I guess, I don't know, I have to figure that out, how to do that and what exactly you're looking for, but sure.
So
It's basically pull out the appendix from the actual Washington code and go through and do your strikeouts and whatever to show what you think
Okay.
it should look like in the code, just
Okay.
in actual code format versus these individual lines where we're kind of, it's like, okay, is there something that's not there? Is there,
Yeah, it's so hard to look at each one like standalone because it's not, right? It's so
Exactly.
intertwined in different places. Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And then when I do that, is that something that I'm just going to share my screen at a meeting, or is that something I email to the group? I really don't know what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be organizing this.
I would say when you're done with it, send it to Dustin and he can either send it to the group or it'll get included with the documents for the next meeting so that everybody can pull it up and review it ahead of time a little bit. Is that right, Dustin?
yeah, that works best for me, is if you send the language suggestions over, I can email them out to the group, and if we're viewing them at these meetings, the plan is to also post that sort of stuff for the meeting documents as well.
Sounds good.
Patrick.
Yeah, related to that, I don't think we've talked about what the executive committee discussion happened on the proposal process for the tag. So if I understand that correctly, we'll need to all the modifications that we want to make, we'll need to submit as code change proposals from the tag. Are you going to be making like a template with who to put down as the contact or the proponent to have us use?
Yes. So I was planning to get that out yesterday. I was not 100% in health yesterday, but I have that pretty much drafted out and ready to send that out to the group. It's essentially the standard code change proposal form, but the top section of the form is pre-filled out, identifying that this is a tag proposal, not a individual. And listening to the commentary from Ken, won't ask any of the tag members to put their names on there to help avoid unnecessary communications going out to them. So it'll be listed as a tag proposal, and contact information will be back to SBCC staff. All right, so continuing the review here for tiny houses, the staff recommendation is to maintain the amendments here, except for this AQ 106. In AQ 104, I have some notes here. Please. So I have maintained the amendment here, but modifying here, we would need a proposal to modify this a little bit. But hearing that there is some desire to potentially uh, revamp this section on a whole, would the recommendations here need to be modified to modify the existing amendments across the board here? Jen?
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, you could say for this whole section, but I will of course pull this report up and look at your staff recommendations and try to incorporate those. So, but yeah, this whole thing, largely it'll be, I think, a lot of repealing things to put it kind of back to closer to the model code, other than this very, the things that we really need and want differently in Washington, like the whole house ventilation or whatever.
I hear you. Thanks. Patrick?
Yeah, I'm in favor of since Jen's proposal needs to of changing what recommendations we need to for that. But then I have a question on the energy conservation. What proposal is needed to modify that? How are we modifying it?
My note there is not leading me to understand exactly what I'm trying to suggest here. AQ 106 is not adopted. Let me pull up the code here and see if I can decipher my own notes. So apologies there. So I guess the modification here isn't necessarily to adopt energy conservation in the 2024 code. The section moves to BB 106, and looking at what we have going on here, the recommendation for AQ 104.1 is to incorporate this into BB 106.1.1. And the modification is just to change AQ 106 energy conservation to BB 106 not adopted. That's the recommendation from the staff. Jonathan?
Would you want the 0.30 CFM per square foot being as the tested metric or the at the time of permit metric, like designed or tested?
That I don't necessarily have a specific opinion on. But looking at what they have in the air or the whole house mechanical ventilation in the model code, they don't have that in there. I mean, I think that it would be applicable on both sections, but what are your thoughts, Jonathan?
It's just difficult. Ventilation doesn't get tested consistently. And I'm just looking at language that would help the jurisdictions for enforcement purposes, right? A lot of the times, the original ERV language, you were supposed to pull the tested values from the HVI document. A lot of the jurisdictions were confused how to do this at the permit stage. So that's when we put in the language 25 and 50 Pascal readings for those. I'm just trying to help clarify for enforcement purposes that is all.
So, do you see there being a need to clarify the language here then? In what would help them do that better to add in the verbiage you were mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, I would say design, right? I mean, because if you test and you're a little bit tighter, I mean, I get it. You should definitely modify the house some sort, an exhaust fan or something. But if you were at the end of your construction, all of a sudden you tested just a little bit tighter and you were not anticipating putting in a whole system, now you're retrofitting. And that, you see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to make it to where it's easy and clear to understand
Gotcha.
at that stage. I mean, personally, I like tested, but then, like I said, you run into the issue where at the end you would probably maybe have to retrofit something. And again, I'm leaving it up to the folks. I just was just trying to get that across.
Any other thoughts on that one? All right. So, Jonathan, would you be willing to volunteer to write a change proposal for that section?
Yeah, I absolutely could. But this is also in the tiny house section, and this is probably not the place to bring it up. But in the real world, there seems to be some confusion on when and who inspects those guys.
Okay.
Uh,
So is this something that needs to be looked at in the mechanical section as well?
Possibly. I could take a peek at both sections and see if some language needs to be redrafted, but we should but yeah, it comes down, it also comes down to who's doing the inspecting, who's doing the testing. Was this done in a factory? Was this not done in a factory? Was this just somebody doing it at their house and got the local jurisdiction to do the inspections instead of LNI? Like it gets very confusing for folks who've been trying to use the tiny house path. And again, this is just specifically to the tiny house path, which is why I'm bringing this up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jen?
Yeah, so if you don't mind scrolling back to where you just were, Dustin, so the air leakage section. I'll wait for
Give
you
me
to get
one
there.
moment.
Yeah, take your time. So the air leakage rate for tiny houses shall not exceed, oh, can't see it
What
anymore.
happened?
You scroll too far. Just need that first line of air leakage. That's what
Oh, I
I'm
hear
trying to
you.
see both of
Sorry.
these sections together. So the air
Gotcha.
leakage rate for tiny houses shall not exceed 0.30 CFM. And then down in the next section, where an air leakage rate not exceeding 0.30 CFM is provided, then the tiny house needs whole house ventilation. Is that just a very lengthy way of saying they always need whole house ventilation? And if that's the case, shouldn't we just say that instead of having to do the brain damage of trying to parse? It seems like we're saying that there's an air leakage rate that they're not allowed to exceed. And then essentially that next section, I think that they would then always, because of that, that's the same threshold, they'd always need whole house mechanical ventilation. Is that how other people are reading it? Because it might just be simpler to say they always need it.
Yeah, it
Like-
does seem to say you have to have this, it can't exceed this. And then when you have this, it doesn't exceed, then you have to have it. So yeah, you're right. It does seem to read that way because there's no exceptions or anything under the air leakage testing above.
Yeah, so the nice thing about that is then we wouldn't have that problem that Jonathan just brought up, which would be very painful, right? You think that you don't need it, and at the end you find out that you do, and you have to retrofit it. So that's part of the change I could include when I'm making my other suggestions, is to just simplify that to say it's always required, because they're always gonna have that air leakage rate testing that's separate, but they kind of always need mechanical ventilation. Seems to be what we were going for with that amendment. So unless people disagree that we need it at all, I mean, we can have that discussion, right? But we can at least simplify that so we're not, yeah, just seems overly complicated.
Yeah, so that you would put AQ 104.1.4 would basically say whole house mechanical ventilation. The tiny house shall be provided with whole house mechanical ventilation in accordance with section 1505.4.
Exactly.
That would be the.
Sounds solid to me too.
So Jen, are you planning to then just to kind of roll that into what you're bringing back for this tiny home section then? Jen, you went on mute if you were
I had
responding back.
really intelligent answer too, but it's gone now. Yeah, I'll have the whole section, the whole model code language, and then all of our amendments, and then my suggested changes. So I can include that change. Yeah, I'll deal with tiny houses as a whole.
Okay.
So if there's anything else anybody, already knows that they want different. Micah.
Yes,
Hi,
Micah, go ahead.
stranger.
Thanks. I don't necessarily want anything different. I believe this language comes directly from the appendix in the model code, and I'm not sure if you said that. I think you might have said that. And I believe we modified it to shorten it to what it is, but we could also look at not providing a further amendment if we wanted to look at what is in appendix. It's actually appendix BB in the 2024 code, and it has very, very similar language for energy conservation. So thanks. And I can't tell you why or how. I don't remember why we modified it this way. I would probably have to ask Dwayne, but that's my history. Thanks.
Looks like the testing requirements or like tested in accordance with blah, blah, blah. It looks like that's part of the part that's changed to get rid of the pointer to chapter 11.
Definitely part of it.
And we don't have the alternate compliance.
Okay. So as far as the tiny house appendix, Jen, you're planning on working on the whole appendix, and then can I connect you and Jonathan to kind of discuss more on this whole house mechanical ventilation topic?
That'd be great
Okay.
if he's game.
Absolutely.
All right. Micah.
Just another question since we're on appendix. Is the tag going to be going through some of the current IRC appendices that address things that we may not be addressing in Washington that we may be being pushed to address or modify further, like they have accessory dwelling units and other things like that? Just a question, and I believe we do adopt radon. We just put it into the code, and are we going to evaluate those current or modified appendices to see if we're going to pull things forward or not? Thanks.
Well, so we went over the radon appendix already, are you saying that there might need to be some additional looks for that appendix? Like right now, the recommendation is standing to maintain the amendments in their current format for at least the radon appendix, and it's escaping me if we rolled over another one that we have adopted in the state.
I definitely think we need to check them out. And then I know there was a big request for us to modify the radon section for the testing issue that was overlooked. So that may come up again. Thanks.
And so we don't have an amendment to that specific section. So looking at the 2021 or 24 code, I'm sorry. Escaping me, hold on.
And
So
it's all right, Dustin, we definitely don't have to get into that. I was just questioning if we're gonna
I mean,
look at those
if
further.
it's something that it is, if there's a need, I think that this is the group to address it right now. But so we, as far as testing goes, we don't have an amendment to that section. But could you maybe elaborate a little bit on what the issue might have been for the testing section?
Sure, there was actually, we adopted it, and I believe Patrick Hanks, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe BIW sent a letter, and maybe your predecessor, Andrea, that sent that. It was a significant increase in the testing requirements, and that wasn't fully addressed, was their concern. It really wasn't discussed because it was a model code language item. And so their concern was the cost and added requirements in this testing section for 2024. They actually requested that we, under emergency rule, rescind the adoption of that specific section. And we could go back and look at records, Dustin, but that's where that came up. And I believe we've had that request previously, and I would assume that we need to look at that again for 2024 and modifying some of those, because they said this is, it's burdensome, especially in places that really historically have not provided or needed radon testing, whether it was after the fact of installation of the equipment, things like that. So probably just need to do some data mining on what we did and why and what that request was after the adoption. Might even have been a public comment, but that's it,
And
Dustin. Thanks.
if you remember, Micah, was was the request based on the 2024 section, or is the 2021 section that we got the request on?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
I think it was on the 2021 for this appendices, and it's just been carried through, and we should probably reevaluate it for 2024 was the thought.
Okay. So, Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know the total history, but this did come up in our internal code development at BIW, and there was concern from builders that it's just an onerous requirement and they have lots of issues with it. I couldn't figure out what kind of change proposed as a code proposal during the window, and I wasn't sure what the tag was going to do. If the tag wants to look at this, happy to help. Part of that, I think there's concerns about kind of it's just like it just tells you to just keep testing and testing and testing and testing until you get a certain result, and it just seems like this isn't really achieving what it's trying to achieve, and it's just adding lots of time and cost. So
Okay. So for, I guess, just clarity on what's going on, we don't have any existing amendments to this section in the 2021 code. So testing is not included in the existing amendments report that we're reviewing currently. And then as we get into the significant changes report, you'll notice here there's also no changes to this section on the 2024 code. So this section is also not included in the significant changes report. If the tag wants to look at this section, I don't think that it's a issue on that one. But we won't have pointers, so this is going to be something that we'll need to kind of undertake outside of the significant changes existing amendments report and maybe have a supplement to those reports that kind of identifies this as a need that was and kind of why it was out there. So for looking at this one, I would have to definitely go back and look at some of the previous records that we have for SBCC to see what the action was by SBCC and result to an emergency rule request from BIW. Because it's not ringing bells for me. It must have happened prior to my time here at SBCC. And but I'm definitely willing to go back and look at that, and if it's something that we need to look at, which sounds like it is, happy to do so. All right, so task for me on that one, I'm going to go back and try to find the emergency rule request and some of that discussion there and bring it back for additional discussion here. Moving forward on the existing amendments report, is there anything else on radon that we'd like to chat about before getting back towards the tiny homes appendix? Seeing no hands, we're going to roll back down to tiny homes. The recommendations here coming from this group is to modify the existing amendments. And I'm gonna go ahead and color these all in. And then we'll get down to the stuff beyond tiny homes. Patrick, go ahead.
Little, not super significant thing I've noticed as I just Control F search trying to find the appendix is it looks like the title of the appendix says tiny houses, but there's a couple times in the code that we reference appendix AQ tiny homes. So that might be an editorial clarification that we want to fix up.
Okay. And so model code language, Patrick, just say yes or no on this one. If model code language is tiny houses and your Control F is identifying some places where we have reference to tiny homes instead.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just make a clear note for myself
Well,
here.
I would have to double check what the model code language is, but the code has both tiny homes and tiny houses. So I don't care which one it is, but we just probably want to make it all match.
Pick one. Okay.
Base codes, tiny houses.
Okay. So I will try to get those identified in as they are across the WAC, and we can use tiny houses instead of tiny homes across the code, and therefore we're using the same language. All right. Then that brings us, or is there anything else on tiny houses? I almost said homes. I'm gonna change my habit. Seeing no hands coming up on that one, we'll roll out of that appendix. And Appendix AR, light straw clay construction, contains no existing amendments. Appendix AS, straw bale construction, has no existing amendments. Appendix AT, solar ready provisions for detached 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses. For the general definitions, section AT 102.1 does not have a corresponding 2024 code section. The staff recommendation is to repeal this section. This is included in our WAC for clarity and is no longer in the 2024 model code text. And so the proposal that would be needed is to strike this section. Any thoughts on that moving into there? So I can, let's see, I'll pull up the Appendix AT, and then this is NB in the 2024. So here's AT. We have this section in here. It's not actually an amendment in here. And then getting into NB of this section, we no longer have that language included. I guess I'm a big liar on that one. So give me 1 second here. This is Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So I'm not necessarily a big mistake maker, but in NB 102.1, we don't have the 102.1 in here. They just have the general definition for solar ready zone. And then in the 2021 version, we have 102.1. So suggesting to pull that out of the WAC language is that's my only suggestion there. Any thoughts on maintaining that in the WAC for 2024? Seeing no hands, I will move on and then we'll potentially come back to that. For the rest of the amendments within the solar appendix, sorry, the solar ready provisions appendix, for general definition, solar ready zone, we change thermal system to water heating system. Recommendation to maintain that existing amendment to that definition. In solar ready zone AT 103.3, the solar ready zone area, we strike the International Fire Code and say as required by this code, and clarify meters instead of millimeters here. And then we bring back in reference to the fire code later. And then we also do not let the solar ready zone be located on roofs slope greater than 212, facing within 45 degrees of true north. For solar ready zone AT 103.6, I guess this whole section did move from Appendix AT to NB. The section numbering is the same, so just need to editorially change these appendices numbers there. And for cap roof penetration sleeves, recommending to maintain that existing amendment. Any additional thoughts on existing amendments for solar ready zones? All right. As far as back to AT 102.1, I see this mainly as an editorial amendment to our WAC and not necessarily being needed in the 2024 version of this. So seeing no hands or comments on that, I'll assume that the tag is okay with that staff recommendation. Getting out of the solar ready appendix AU cob construction, monolithic adobe. We have no existing amendments. Appendix AV Board of Appeals, no existing amendments. Appendix AW 3D printed building construction, no existing amendments. Just a side note that there was some movement in the legislative session on 3D printed buildings. I don't know if this one's going to come back in the short session next year, but this might be something we could look at in the future. Appendix AX, zero energy residential building provisions. No existing amendments within that appendix. Then Appendix AWU, dwelling unit fire sprinkler systems. We had some lengthy discussion on this one earlier, whether or not we should bring the section 2904 to the appendix or strike this appendix and adopt 2904.1.1, or no, sorry, just 2904, and maintain our amendment to 2904.1.1. Any additional thoughts generated in between earlier today and now on this topic? I think that we are Barry and Patrick, you guys are gonna work on this one a little bit moving forward. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, we should probably just flag this as for like a potential amendment.
Okay. Let's pull that. Okay. Then we have Appendix AWV fire sprinklers. This one is a Washington only appendix. So for these, the staff recommendation is to maintain the existing amendments. And I guess question for the group, if we're referencing back to AWU with this appendix, is this appendix needed, or should this be put into the same appendix with AWU? Is that something that we could look at a little bit further, Patrick and Barry?
Yeah, I think maybe we should kind of hold off on that section until we rectify the section before it.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm clapping on that thing. I hit the wrong button.
It's okay. I've been trying to see the emotes coming up, and if you unmute and do all that, I will try to call on you as long as that hand clap doesn't go down before I see it. All right, so on this one, I'm just going to add to my note.
Just for clarity, AWU is an adopted appendix. AWV is not. So AWV is the one that can be adopted by jurisdictions, but isn't mandatory. Does that make sense? AWV is the one that says that you shall sprinkler single family and townhouses. So it is not a mandatory adoption, but AWU currently is. So if you combine them, you will lose that.
And I think maybe the genesis of the two separate appendices is that optional component where we were saying in AWU that where the sprinklers are installed or if they're required, you do it this way. And then AWV allows a jurisdiction to outright require them in reference back to how we require them. And so I guess we can just include that in the considerations for looking at AWV 5151003 and 101.2. Just if we could have some comments on that, that would be nice. All right, moving to Patrick, go ahead.
Is our intent to wait to approve this report until we get all of the code changes back and approved, or to approve the report with just kind of, here's what we're going to work on, and then finish up the code proposals later?
That is my thought, is that I'm not looking to approve this report today. When we get to the end of this document, we've got some sections we've identified for additional discussion. So I don't think that we're ready to approve this report just yet. Additionally, I'd like to come back through and fill out the tag member recommendation column as well, so that it's clear what has been discussed as we move forward. Because in some places the staff recommendation isn't aligning 100% with the tag recommendation. So I would like to make edits to this report to bring back after our final discussions and approve it as a whole after we are, complete with our deliberations. All right, moving to Appendix AWY, Construction and Demolition Material Management. This one is another Washington generated appendix, and this one doesn't have a 2024 IRC location. So any recommendation to maintain these amendments will come with the recommendation to also renumber / letter as appropriate to fit into the organization of the 2024 IRC. That being said, the staff recommendation across all of this appendix is to maintain the existing amendments. And I would pause here to ask if the tag has any thoughts on this particular section needing updates or being still relevant or anything else. All right, seeing no hands coming up, we'll move on from that appendix. Then we go to Appendix AWZ, Building Deconstruction. This is another Washington specific appendix. Barry, go ahead.
I have to step away for a couple minutes. I'm handling the front counter. I don't know if we still have quorum, but I'll be right back.
If it's just you gone, we are good for right now, but do you have an idea? Oh, anyway, we will probably be holding off any specific action at the moment, but we'll verify quorum when we do take action. Any thoughts on maintaining or altering this appendix at all? Okay, seeing no other hands coming up. That is the end of the existing amendments report. So to recap, based on the minutes we approved earlier today and discussion at our previous meetings, we've got some additional discussion to have on these sections. My suggestion would be to come back not necessarily this Thursday, but next Tuesday with preparation to talk about those sections to hopefully get this report across the finish line with an approval and identifying specific sections for additional amendments by the tag. It would probably be a good time to broach the topic of tag proposals on the code moving forward. At the executive committee meeting last Friday, there was no specific action taken, but the sentiment was that the tag would guide its process here. So as we get towards as we move through this, we talked about having a code proposal form to not identify specific tag members to help save their email inboxes and phone numbers from unwanted communications there. And so as SBCC staff handles any of that, we will maintain who is the main draft person on those proposals, and any questions that come in from the public will route out, and we will insulate the tag members from direct public communication on that one. And so and then as we get, now that we're here to the end of this report, my desire is to go through and fill out the tag recommendation column, and places where we have changes to the staff recommendation, we'll identify that. And I plan on getting a list out to the tag on the sections that we've identified for additional work, so that we can have a document looking to have a checklist for what we're trying to get done, and so we can keep that organized. And beyond that, as far as time constraints for getting this across the finish line and completely drafted, ready for filing, we're hoping to have all the CR 102s ready by October 1. The work for this tag will probably need to conclude by the end of this month in order for time needed for drafting the reports that go along with our CR 102 to be drafted. So there's some economic analysis that has to happen. We're looking to draft a preliminary cost benefit analysis. And the work group of economic impact is going to begin meeting tomorrow at 1 to 3 to discuss how they're addressing that topic. I don't anticipate any action on IRC stuff happening at these beginning meetings, but it's my hope that we can have proposals from the tag drafted and approved, along with all the public proposals reviewed and approved or denied by the end of this month, so that we can start having the economic analysis meetings in September, sorry. And if we go a little bit over, it's not going to kill that process, but I'm looking to try to get as much time in September for drafting the stuff that we need to get drafted as possible. So thoughts on timelines for the tag to draft their proposals and have them back to the tag for review and consideration. I'm seeing no hands, nobody's unmuting. Does Patrick, go ahead.
So we need to have everything, assuming that we meet twice a week for August. The 28th would be our final meeting, and we need to be able to approve whatever we want to approve, disapprove what we want to disapprove by that point.
That is the date certain at the moment that I'm asking for the tag. My question for you guys is that an unreasonable date? I'm not opposed to going a little longer, but for the work group of economic impact to meet and deliberate our recommendations, they're going to need some time, and then to draft reports need some time as well. And so asking the group is having proposals back in to deliberate in about 2 or 3 weeks, reasonable and doable by this group.
I think it's doable, especially if we we'll need to get through the significant changes report, but then if we try to prioritize getting all of like the initial like first hearings done on all the proposals, and then maybe even 1 week or one meeting we don't schedule anything, so people can use that time to like work on changes, meet in work groups, and then make sure we get everything back that final week for like last review.
That works for me. I mean, if we go beyond the 28th and potentially slide in on September 4th, I think that still leaves, some time for the work group of economic impact to do their thing and for staff to draft those reports. We're on a tight timeline right now to come in on October 1. Um, and I guess to characterize why October 1 has been chosen, October 1 is a code revisor filing deadline. And if we chose the next filing deadline, which is October 22nd, the first day we would be allowed to have hearings would be November 25th, which is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And I don't think that it is appropriate for us to try to have hearings on that week. And even if we did have hearings that week, we then have the holiday Thursday and Friday, and then the end of November wraps up that following weekend. And our final adoption day is December 1, the Monday after Thanksgiving. To have hearings and have any sort of meaningful absorption of public comment at that point to make final decisions by December 1 is just not enough time. So we're looking to have the hearings on all the codes in early November, so that we can respond to public comment appropriately before having the final adoption meeting. And so October 1 is our date certain we need to file by. And so in September, we're looking to most likely have a special council meeting to recommend the CR 102s that's going to fall outside of the 19th of September. So that's our regular scheduled council meeting is the 19th of September. There's potential we'll have it on the 26th or sometime that week after, just to try to get as much time as possible before making the filing on October 1. Any other thoughts from this group? I appreciate your input, Patrick. I was hoping other folks might jump on and say, yes, this is not a huge task that we're asking and it's doable, or it's huge, but it's doable. But
I think we do what we have to do. I mean,
yeah, I mean, yes,
make it work.
That's where we're at is
I had in my head that we were going to have to finish it for this month's council meeting. So finding out we needed to get ready for next month's council meeting gave me a lot more time than I was mentally thinking. So,
okay. Mariko.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only person who's new to this tag this session, or if there are other people who are new to this process, but I feel a little bit confused about, what deliverables I'm going to need to be responsible for outside of these meetings where we discuss this. And I don't think we need to answer that right now, but just as far as like me having a good answer for if I feel like it's reasonable or not, since I don't really have a good understanding of what my tasks are outside of discussing these things at this meeting, I have a hard time answering that.
Gotcha. Well, as far as, things that we've got delivering or for deliverables outside of this meeting, I believe I have you down, Mariko, for some work on some code sections. Any proposed language changes that we're trying to bring back to this group to discuss and approve towards the council meetings. We're looking to go to a committee meeting to have the BFRW bless the recommendations of the tag, potentially make minor modifications at that level, and then take it to the full council. You're not obligated to attend any of those meetings, but should questions arise during those meetings, proponents of any modifications or drafters of those modifications are encouraged to attend. If you can't, written comments can always be submitted as well. But for the most part, getting stuff back to this group to deliberate and include in their package up the chain to the full council is primarily what we're looking for there. I don't know if I muddied the water at all on that, but apologies if I did. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, just back to scheduling. I cannot attend next Tuesday, so I'm going to have all the tiny house stuff ready for this Thursday.
Okay.
And I have a little bit of low back pain, so I need a break. I need to go for a walk. So I'm going to take 10.
Okay. Let's finish up these comments because I know also Angela has to take off as well. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when we worked through the residential energy code, we were able to get a lot done in a very short time frame. But what helped is having an idea of like, here's the meeting where everybody has to have all their work groups and stuff back, and we knew that you need to have it into staff like 2-3 days beforehand so it can get posted. So I think if like Angela and Dustin work out a rough schedule of when we want to discuss things, and then the kind of the final deadline for everybody get your work groups in for the tag stuff, and then for any external proposals, make sure you send in by staff by this date, so then we're all prepared for the final meeting or meetings.
Yes. Angela?
So yeah, so I do have to take off. So we do need to, the tag members need to choose a new chairperson to sort of preside over this meeting, because Dan's not here. So Dustin, I'm not sure how we go about that, but then I would say after we do that, then take a break.
That would be my suggestion as well. So as far as selecting a chair pro tem, I guess I'm looking for volunteers and or nominations. And in the past, staff has chaired meetings before as well, but I would defer to any tag members who wish to sit in the seat for the moment. So seeing no hands coming up, no unmutings. Patrick, go ahead. Oh,
All right,
never mind.
looking at the bylaws, I think it has to be one of the members in attendance.
Okay, could somebody please volunteer? It's really hard, as you can tell.
I guess I can do it. Nobody else wants to.
Okay. And then can we have a quick motion to nominate Patrick as the chair pro tem for the rest of this meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh,
Okay, do we have any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Any opposed? All right, the meeting is yours, Patrick, and I will see you all on Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's take a 10-minute break.
You guys come back at 10:50.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Dustin, did we finish going through the existing amendments report?
We got to the end of it, but I would say that we need a motion to table it till not next meeting, but the Tuesday. Where are we at? We're Tuesday the 9th, no, the 12th, sorry.
So moved. Okay, we have a motion to postpone the existing amendments report until the meeting on the 12th. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Before we get to any tag discussion, I just wanted to make sure that if there's anyone from the public that they have an opportunity to provide comment. Okay, seeing none, is there any discussion from tag members?
So we are not going to talk about existing amendments on Thursday.
Oh, I did forget, Jen, you're not available on the Tuesday after. So maybe we table it till Thursday for that component, but my thought was that we would table it for everybody to come back with their discussion for that report on Tuesday and have a little bit of extra time. So,
Why don't we just postpone it until the next meeting? Because we can always postpone it again if need be.
yeah, that works.
Can we get an amendment to the motion? Or if the maker wants to just amend their motion.
I'll just amend it.
Okay. So we're amending the motion to postpone the existing amendments report until our meeting this Thursday. Mariko, you're the second. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion carries. Dustin, when you're ready, let's bring up the significant change report.
All right, so it's taken us several meetings to go through the existing amendments report. And that report was only less than 100 pages. This report is 234 pages long. For the most part, the contents of this report recommend incorporating the changes in the model code. If we get to changes that affect existing amendments sections, they should all point back to the existing amendments report and make recommendations there. And by and large, on the whole, the staff recommendation is to incorporate the model code language changes. And so I was hoping to not have to read every line of this report. And I guess as a suggestion, maybe go chapter by chapter. And if there's sections that the tag wants to discuss a little bit further. I was hoping maybe there might be some hand raising to identify those sections. Otherwise, I'm kind of beholden to read each line as we go through and try to explain these revisions. Any thoughts on how we run through this report for the tag? Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Unless any other tag members have opinion, I think for this we could go chapter by chapter and you could just kind of scroll through, and then if there's any sort of highlighted things you want to bring up, and then we can ask tag members if there's any thing they want to change, any issues from the model code that they think wasn't addressed. And
Okay,
then we can just,
I like that.
I don't think we need to vote on it section by section, since that'll just take up time, unless any tag members feel differently.
Okay, then I'll roll through and just try to highlight things that or that have been highlighted by staff as potential modifications being needed that aren't included in our existing amendments report. So with chapter 1, scrolling through, and then I'll try to keep an eye on the hands that might come up, and if I miss you, please just
I can
okay,
keep an
thank
eye
you,
out
Patrick.
and I can call people out.
All right, thank you. All right, and I'll try to just go 101 scope and general requirements. We have an existing amendment to 101.2 that we've got some work going on in the existing amendments arena. So that one will be come back with some additional discussion. 102 applicability. There's a change in 102.61. In chapter 2 definitions, unless there's anything in chapter 1 we need to go back to.
Yeah, anything that tag members want to change in this section, or anything you feel like that staff may have missed that was changed in the model code? All right. See no hand. Let's go on to chapter 2.
Gotcha. Chapter 2 definitions. On these, you'll see that we've got the cost yes or no indicated as no for all the definitions. That being that the definitions just clarify the application of the terminology across the code. So bringing that clarification is not a cost increase or decrease. And as we scroll through, and we talked about in the existing amendments review, going to look for other definitions that don't have significant changes. You see some recommendation here for example, cavity insulation that includes it says for the definition applicable in Chapter 11C section in 1101.6. Since Chapter 11 is not adopted, the recommendation by staff is to modify this one to strike this definition from the Chapter 2 and rely on the definitions within the state energy code. This particular amendment strategy for Chapter 11 has been identified that there's a couple other definitions in Chapter 2 that might reference Chapter 11 that could need some state amendment. I haven't had a chance to go back and review that, but it's something that I plan to bring back for our existing amendments review, as well as bring in final recommendations for this report as well. So as we move forward, I would like to just pause because there's going to be a lot of these Chapter 11 not adopted amendment needed to remove from the Washington Residential Code recommendations. Is there any thoughts on that recommendation that we could save some commentary on other ones as well?
Any thoughts from the tag?
I don't really have any thoughts on that either, but I think like the one thing that I noticed when I was going through this was just kind of some inconsistency with like when it was, sometimes you said we need to amend it because it references Chapter 11 and sometimes you don't, but you said you're going to go through that more thoroughly for the future. So that was
Yes.
kind of one of my only comments on Chapter 2.
Yeah, so the main for this one is as far as inconsistencies that I'm aware have been identified. There's existing amendments there's existing definitions in the model code that reference to Chapter 11 that are not amended by the state of Washington. And that's the inconsistency that I think we're looking to go back and clean up in this round and identify those specific sections. What's contained in this report is the model code language changes. So for example, cavity insulation is a new definition in the book this season. And so I'm trying to catch those as appropriate. Mariko, is there other inconsistency besides what's not included in the report?
I think even and again, maybe it's like just my lack of experience with this, but just I have to pull up. Give me a minute. Yeah, it might be just my not quite following with how I'm supposed to be reviewing this report. I can't recall off the top of my head if they were all having to do with ones that were already existing that we should strike, or if they were new changes that should be struck also.
Okay. Well, as we go through this one, these are only identifying changes in the base code. And so that's part of something I gotta get done before we come back at some of the future meetings, is to make sure that we're catching all of the references to Chapter 11 in the definitions. And as we go through other chapters, I don't think that there's a bunch of reference to Chapter 11 that we need to catch in the other sections, but there might need to be some additional looks in the other chapters as well. But the primary focus for what I'm looking to do is to make sure we catch all of them in the definitions section.
So I think there's going to be some definitions that will pop up because they were changed this code cycle. But there's also probably some definitions that may be missed because we don't have a current amendment and they didn't have any changes. I think it's within the official policies and procedures to have committees propose their own amendments. And since we are working on a delayed timeline here with those reports, I think if the tag identifies an issue, particularly one if it's, cleaning up the code, removing, unnecessary things, I think it's appropriate for us to identify that and propose something to the committee. So if we need to make a specific editorial proposal with all of that, I think that would be a good idea. And if is that something that you're going to be able to do on your own, Dustin, or do you need a work group from the tag to help assist with that effort?
I should be able to wrangle that one and bring that back to the group for discussion.
Great.
So just for example, the definition of access, which is the very first one under Chapter 2, it references Chapter 11, but you have a recommendation of no amendment needed.
That is,
whereas other times it has said yes.
That's one that I should have in there, just like we have below down here. So appreciate the catch on that one.
So is it helpful if I like email you a list of those and you can update this, or for the ones that I've noticed?
If you have a list of things that you've noticed, please email me and I'll update what we have going on here. And if we catch it during today's conversation, by all means, point it out, please.
Okay.
Do any tag members disagree with having staff clean up the Chapter 11 definitions? Okay, I will say go forth and good luck, Dustin, on that effort.
All right.
Let's get back to
I appreciate it. All right. So this one should be also a yes in here. Okay. And I guess as I'm scrolling through, we have this one as well, air handling unit. I'm not sure why those are missed because it's pretty obvious that there's a Chapter 11 section there. So
I have more than a handful of them. I think it's probably just faster if I email you a list of those rather than us like copy pasting for every single one.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, I appreciate
If
it.
everyone's okay with that.
I'm not seeing any hands coming up to object.
Yeah, I don't imagine we're going to get through this whole thing today, so we can
Definitely not.
bring those changes up in between.
Yes. All right. So if you can just email me the list, we'll catch them as we go. It's killing me right now to see them as we're going and not to see them caught. So apologies for missing some of these Chapter 11 references. I will save time by not going through and editing all those, but that'll be the intention, is to catch the chapter 11 references in this stuff. So, okay, moving on. We'll clean up the chapter 11 stuff for a future meeting and recap that one. Outside of chapter 11 changes, I don't have a ton of modifications identified for the definition section. Mariko?
The only other one that I wanted to note was the definition of sleeping loft. I think we need to defer that one also to our big discussion about lofts versus sleeping lofts.
Okay. We have the dwelling unit one. I will get sleeping loft noted for some additional work. For this existing amendment, definition to dwelling unit, the recommendation is to incorporate the new language into the amendment, which is for the definition applicable in chapter 24, see section G2403. I do believe that in this existing amendment, we have this section struck out. I will verify on that one. Moving on, got some more references to chapter 11. We're just going to clean those up and come back and point those out further. For fire separation distance, we have new model code language adding townhouse units to the definition of fire separation distance, recommending to incorporate the model code language into that existing amendment.
Any tag discussion on that?
Yeah, actually, that we did discuss when we were looking at the existing amendments report. We have those those Washington Amendment figures in the townhouse section about continuity, and we'd noted that we were going to kind of look at that holistically. I think it might have been Angela that was going to look at that and see how this ties in with those figures.
Okay. And anything that's got chapter 11 stuff, I'm just gonna breeze by because I need to modify those.
Oh, there's the, do we want to talk about the sleeping loft?
Yes, sorry. So we have that one modify, or we want to have additional work on this one. So this one's pretty much flagged for a potential amendment. Any additional discussion on this definition?
Unless there's additional discussion, I think we could just change it to tag wants to clarify.
And that, yeah, I got that other one, sorry.
I know we've talked about sleeping unit before. Has that come up? Is there anything we need to do there? Looks like that's just a chapter 11.
Yeah, that's where the change is. It just points to chapter 11. I'm not aware of anything that we need to come back and address within that one, but it might come up in conjunction with the lofts discussion.
I might be confusing something.
I mean,
We
there's
did
a
talk
lot of
about that a couple weeks ago, and Angela was saying that she doesn't think that sleeping units is anywhere in the residential code, but it's model code language. And I think she said some people argue with her on whether or not a sleeping unit can be built under the residential code. So I think at the time we sort of said like, we'll just let it go, not worry about it for now. But
Okay. I guess if Angela feels strongly about it, she can bring it up at the next meeting.
Yes. Okay, that is the end of chapter 2. So we talked about sleeping unit, we talked about sleeping loft and changes to chapter 11 references. So for the chapter 11 stuff, I'll go back and just re-verify that I've caught all these with an appropriate recommendation to not bring that language into the Washington Residential Code. And then as a supplement to this report, or maybe to the existing amendments report, I'll bring in the stuff that's not a state amendment or model code language change that references chapter 11 and chapter 2, and also attempt to catch the things in other chapters that are relevant to that particular discussion. Anything else in chapter 2 before we move to chapter 3?
I'll also add, I forgot to call this at the chapter 1. I'll break it up since we do it for tag members as well. If there's any members from the public that want to provide public comment on chapter 2, please, raise your hand. All right, seeing no discussion, let's move on to chapter 3.
Okay. Chapter 3. In this chapter, as we run through this one, the one thing I'll be pointing out is the cost increase or decrease information. Since we're looking at model code changes and not proposals from proponents in the state of Washington, I'm relying heavily on the ICC documents to identify whether or not there's a cost increase or decrease. If they are indicating no increase or decrease, I'm using the term no for no change. And then if there's an increase or decrease indicated, I've tried to have the links to the documents containing those proposals on the ICC monographs. So the documents I'm linking to are quite large. So if you do go to them, you'll need to search the specific proposal number that I have listed there within the hyperlink. So as we run through this one, for design criteria, I'm not recommending any modifications to this section. Switching from what was in the previous code to allowable stress design is indicated as an increase. But we also have some movement on these sections potentially with changes in the ASCE design criteria, snow loading type topics. And I'm sure that I'm mincing words horribly there. So there's no recommendation to change this section, but we may have amendment coming down that affects snow loads across the code.
And I'll just clarify, since we're getting into more substantial stuff now, if any tag members or anybody from the public have something that they want to discuss as we roll through it, please, raise your hand or just, start talking about it, and we can address it as we go through. And then anything we miss, we can talk about at the end of the chapter.
Okay. And for the most part, all these changes are recommended to be incorporated into the Washington Code. A lot of table changes here. Several pages of table changes. For design criteria, we have the anchorage of water heaters. We have a see existing amendment report with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment, and that's correlated on the existing amendment report. So we've had some discussion on this one, and I would have to, I don't know if we made a different recommendation on that one. So let me actually open that back up so I can look at these side by side.
And also, I know that we highlight the code language for the determination of seismic design category, but the figures changed, and that's caused a big shift for Washington. So I think it might be helpful if we include that specific figure in the report.
So you're saying put the actual figure in this report to show the change?
At least for Washington, I don't think we have to do it for
Oh, all the figures that show the whole
all the
everywhere?
figures, but at least for Washington.
Okay. Let me. And so I'll make that change and bring it back to our next meeting.
I think it might be in the section or two above that.
Probably that one too. I'm just going to make a note on all of them and I'll place it in the appropriate section.
Sounds good.
And it's
Any tag members want to discuss that, disagree with that?
So we also have a proposal that has to do with this determination of seismic design categories. And when we're reviewing these, do we defer reviewing that proposal till totally later? Like we make decisions about these things now, and then we look at the proposal later and then come backwards to see how it might affect these sections? Or do we look at it holistically where we're looking at all of them all at once?
That is a great question. Traditionally, this report would be done in advance of the proposal window being opened up. So BIW submitted that proposal because we didn't know what the tag was going to do. And just to save time, I'm not going to push discussion today to decide to propose an amendment on this, because we could do that with the already reviewed one. I don't know if the tag wants to try to review it section by section, unless the tag really feels strongly about that. I'm gonna defer to saying no, since that wasn't previously decided upon, and since Angel's not here, we can always, I don't think we'll be approving this report entirely today. But I anticipate that we'll be talking about the proposals in future meetings.
Yeah. Just for reference, this is the new seismic design map for the Western United States. This seismic design E section out here is greatly expanded as compared to previous maps. I believe that the E was just a little tiny bubble out here on the peninsula. Let me pop, well, we can save some time and bring that back a little bit later, but when I bring this those figures in, I'll bring in the old figure as well so we can see the change. And let me get to this section in our existing amendments report. So 3012210.
I don't think we have an existing amendment on it per se.
No, not necessarily
Not necessarily
here, but I'll bring it here so we can. I wanted to make sure that this recommendation is the same in the for 3012210. I want to make sure that that's the same across both reports. Okay.
Also, I suppose I would want to change. I think if that figure does create a cost, or I guess in this report, are we only basing the cost description on what the ICC proposal was?
Correct.
Okay, never mind then.
For 3022, we have an existing amendment there. Sorry. That should be 302.3 here. And just looking 302.3.
So I took a holistic look at the two-family dwelling section because there have been a bunch of changes, and that's part of the work that I did related to the existing amendments report and this. And I personally would like to look at it holistically, but we could do that on Thursday or next Tuesday.
Okay. So we'll hit all of 3023 with your proposal language there.
Yes. And so is that how I should present it and email it to you? Is I should give you an edited version of what I think it should be?
Yes.
I think you've already done the first pass here. You want me to present like a combined?
Yeah, so when you come through, I would show everything as, the amended sections, just throw them in there. You don't necessarily need to clarify the red language as being new language, or I'm sorry, as a state modification, is because it gets busy trying to show model language changes, state amendment language, and proposed changes across all of that. So my recommendation would be to come through with a draft showing all of 302.3. Any section that contains state amendment language, just incorporate it in there like it's the base language you're working with, and show changes to the whole section with underlined strikeout, and the sections that have state amendments in them. I'll go through and make sure, or not make sure, but I will identify those as state amendment sections, and then we'll go through and identify the model code base language modifications as model code sections that we're looking to amend. Just for clarity and ease on your part, to try to just get it in there without a whole bunch of colors and underlines and strike throughs that might make the review of that section a little more difficult.
Yeah, it's a little tricky because they've reorganized the section and added new subsections in the model code. Like the model
Yep.
code has changed a lot. So.
Yeah,
All right.
so looking at our existing amendment report, we've got all of this whole section. We got the recommend, or you're coming back with some recommended language there. And so this is just 3023, we're going to be looking at as a whole, and we'll try not to go through line by line like we're doing with this report. All right, so that takes us out of 302.3, brings us to 302.13, where we get out of the recommendations made by staff. So all of that stuff in 302.3, a lot of changes in the model code affecting state amendment language, and we'll just come back and look at that with your proposal, Mariko.
Is there looks like there's a missed space on that table R303.1.2 in between that material.
Oh, this is like to get the tables in here and
Oh.
saving a little bit of time. This is just a snip from the website.
Gotcha.
So there's if it's dark blue like this indicates it's straight from the website, and I won't be able to go in and like modify the text super duper easy. If we need to modify this stuff, we can definitely create the tables and move it down later, but I do see what you mean there though. And when drafting this report, I did try to keep the sections from crossing pages, but as we've modified them, it's just messed everything up. So I will go back and clean that up as we finalize this report. This one will probably come forward with some more sleeping loft discussion as we move forward. And chapter 3 by far has the most changes across the code. More sleeping loft stuff, we'll be talking about this further. So all of 315 we'll be coming back to discuss in detail. And so we got a proposal on EV charging systems that's posted to today's meeting, but we'll probably come back and look at this work by Patrick and Quinn when we're trying to finalize our discussions on the existing amendments reports. Got sleeping lofts added to EEROs. And the recommendation is to incorporate that language there and the ICC 500 reference.
Good.
Yeah, just one thing kind of related to the lofts issue. In the 2021, we moved the definition of egress access, what's it called? Egress roof
Right.
access window from the tiny house appendix into chapter 2. But then we did not amend this section. That definition says it can comply with this section. But then it didn't change anything here to make those work. So for example, I had a habitable attic with no vertical wall. So somebody was proposing to put a roof access window into the plane of the roof. But then an inspector wasn't sure how that could comply with like the sill height requirement. So if we want that to be used throughout dwellings other than tiny houses, I think we need to address it here, not just in the definitions.
So,
Maybe that's an existing amendment discussion, not a
so
significant
but
changes.
19-1. One thing that's not included is movement of this section in this report. Does anybody off the top of their head know what the section number is for the 2021 version of this?
It's 310.
Okay.
Escape. Where it's
Is-
required.
Yeah, 310.1. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
I'm so we have this one identified for some modifications in there. So we want to correlate the emergency roof access openings in this section, right?
Maybe, I think it's actually 310.2. It's more like the parameters, right? So like their minimum dimensions and the sill height and stuff. So we added a definition that says the roof access window can be used to satisfy 310 something. I think it's 310.2. But then we didn't make any changes in that section to either explicitly allow them or to say like they don't need to comply with the sill height or how you would measure that or anything like that. I mean, there's really nothing. I still think that the language maybe doesn't need anything at all because there's really nothing that prevents them because there's nothing that says emergency escape and rescue has to be a window or a door, right? You could put an antique ship porthole in the side of your house if it met the dimensions and the sill height, right? Like there's nothing, just needs to open. Sorry. So I don't know if this is the place for this discussion or not. I just
Well, I
want us to
think
lose
as
it.
we're doing like I would say that these reports that we're looking at are may be better, in the future combined into one document where we look at the existing amendment and significant changes as a whole, because as I'm going through and looking at this, the discussion on significant changes can potentially not involve the discussion on existing amendments and vice versa. So making sure that the comments on here are carried across from both report, I think it's appropriate to discuss that at either juncture in the existing amendments or significant changes um, discussion. So I've got this note here to correlate emergency roof access openings to this section, which I would say to be 319. Is that an appropriate one? Just to say 319, or do we need to hit a specific decimal there? So I think if we just said 319 instead of 319.1, that'll allow us to look at it in 319.2 which is the emergency escape and rescue openings. Okay. Any more thoughts on the emergency roof access? Okay. So this one,
Can we
although it's
go,
more, go ahead.
sorry, can we go back to 322.3? Accessibility. So this section is about care facilities, which I talked about at one of our earlier meetings, that like I kind of find the definition or the charging language in chapter 1 about like what is a care facility versus an adult family home versus a daycare facility or whatever the other term was. I find that a little bit confusing, but this one says care facilities need to meet chapter 11 of the IBC, and that seems like a really big deal. Again, I don't know what actually meets the definition of a care facility. But I guess that one just like stuck out to me as like potentially being a big deal. I don't know how others feel about that or if I'm misreading it. Because the
Well,
portion of a dwelling used to operate a business providing care, that could be like the whole house, it seems like. So then does that mean like all the bathrooms need to be accessible? I don't know.
I don't think
well,
so. It's really limited to that business area. And so people, like imagine a wheelchair user going to this care facility, they would need to, get out of their vehicle, have an accessible route in, and use that area. So if there's a different portion of the dwelling that's actually a dwelling, then that would not need to comply with that. But yes, it is a significant thing to comply with Chapter 11, for sure.
is this section a section that should maybe be rolled into that review of 102.1, or I'm sorry, whichever section is the scoping one where we're discussing care facilities and how they apply across Washington? Um, is this a potential section that needs to maybe an amendment? As we
I don't think so. I think that the only thing that we were actually trying to do there is solve a problem that's inappropriate to solve there, which is confusion over whether or not an adult family home is required to be sprinklered. And that's so I don't think, unless there were other issues, I know that it's confusing just to read that section at all, the way it's written, but there was no proposal to change how we really deal with care facilities. I think there was just, as we were reading it and trying to make things consistent, I think we noticed some weirdness. Like sometimes it says one family dwelling, sometimes it says dwelling unit. But whether or not facilities provide that are operating a business to care for people need to comply with accessibility, I think is a standalone. They're just different issues.
can. Do we want to change the recommendation for this section at all?
So previously no accessibility was required. Is that the change?
Well, this section's all brand new in this version of the code. So I wouldn't necessarily say accessibility wasn't required, but I think this is intended to bring it back. Let me see if I can pop open some insight on this one. – So looking at the IRC insights, looks like the Department of Justice Americans with Disabilities Act regulations require home businesses that are defined as public accommodations or commercial facilities to be accessible. Care facilities would be defined under the ADA as public accommodations, either category 6 or category 11. Areas of the home that are not part of a public accommodation or commercial facility are not required to be accessible. A link to these requirements is included in the bibliography. The only exception to these requirements is reflected in exception 1 to 101.2 and exception 320, or the exception to 320.1 for owner-occupied transient lodging facilities. So it looks like they're just trying to clarify the application of the ADA to care facilities. So any additional thoughts?
Yeah, it looks like in the 2021, the only thing under the accessibility section was live work units, and then where there are 4 or more dwelling units in a single structure, so basically townhouses. And it accepted the lodging houses. So it is a change. So basically, yeah, it makes sense because those things were sort of like added, like, sure, you can build them under the IRC, and then there's really not a bunch of code sections that relate to those different care facilities, right? The only thing that we really have is the adult family homes section, which I think is distinct because I think that's a distinct license versus this could just be some other kind of medical care, and it could be day use only or something. That is a significant, people may not want to build under the IRC, or there may not be an incentive to do so if they are required to have accessibility. But if that's to comply with the ADA, I don't know how easy it is for us to just not adopt that.
I think it might boil down to whether or not care facilities is maintained in 101.2.
Is it a
But-
case where the code is clarifying that, like, if the ADA already applied to them, that may be something they already had to do, but it wasn't in the codes, whereas now it's trying to put it in the codes? Could that be the case?
I think that that's what's happening here, is that it's trying to clarify the application of ADA. There's it's a federal regulation, and not in all the places in the codes, it doesn't always point to all of the ADA requirements. And so I think this is just trying to clarify application and, maybe point to some more.
Maybe what's difficult is that there is no definition of care facility. And so when does this apply? Because, isn't an adult family home a facility that's caring for people?
And I think that's where that confusion in 101.2 arises, is that the adult family home is a care facility, but it's something special for Washington that doesn't necessarily align with all the terminology in the base code.
Do we need to do a code change proposal to add a definition for care facility?
I mean, that seems like a model code problem. That's not really a Washington thing that we're adding, right? That seems, I mean, we solve model code problems here all the time, but I think we could leave it to, those other things that are not adult family homes that are enumerated in the scoping language, I guess.
All right.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this item?
Do we need to note that adult family homes also would need to be accessible?
They would not, because they have their own chapter, right? That's specific. So I mean, they sort of do, right? They could have a ramp. There's different sleeping room types. So some people have some mobility and can use steps, but they don't require full accessibility with chapter 11. So we could add an exception here that says they do not, to make that clear, but I would think that would just sort of muddy the water even more of, is an adult family home a care facility, if we just leave those as like separate concepts.
So somebody previously has already done the analysis to make sure that our adult family home section and ADA are reconciled in past
I
code
don't think
cycles.
so. I don't know. I don't think it does comply. I mean, because a single family home does not require accessibility. And I think the adult family home concept is, it's not, even though it is run by a business, it's not really treated like a commercial operation, right? It's not like you're going into a hospital. This is the house that you live in. Like you probably get your own bedroom. Sometimes there's more than one person to a bedroom, but it's sort of like you're living, the whole point is that you're kind of living in a house experience. So they don't require full accessibility. It's just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's a weird,
Because I feel like I understand the concept of an adult family home and like how that sort of like should be way more than I understand what a care facility means. Like how would you define a care facility then? Because you've talked about like, well, you have your own bedroom and it's kind of like a house. And I'd imagine if you're built under the SRC, a care facility also is similar. And I'm struggling just to imagine what a care facility is, since we've said an adult family home and a care facility are different. What is a care facility that can be built under the SRC?
code. What's the SRC?
Sorry, under the IRC.
So yeah, if you go back to that scoping section, it's just what's listed there, where it's pretty brief, right? It'll say like a facility caring for 5 or fewer people or 5 or more people or whatever it says. Yeah, 101.2. That's all the information we have. And I think Angela said there's like kind of adult daycares in a way where adults will go during the day. Could be people, I don't know why, I don't know if it's unhoused people or people with developmental disabilities, that kind of thing. That's all we really have is what's listed here. And then I would also look at the IBC to kind of see what's listed there and sort of definitions there to understand this better. Does the commentary have more explanation?
I mean, this one just kind of covers the change for the daycare facility.
It's all right. We can move on from this.
Yeah.
If we're not gonna make an amendment, let's keep going. I'm hoping we can get through chapter 3 today.
Okay. So this one we changed in relation to some of our existing amendment discussion. So we changed this one from repeal the existing amendment to maintain the existing amendment. So the recommendation here is that amendments needed to this section, and we're just correlating the existing amendment there. That is the end of chapter 3 here with the impact protection options.
Excellent. Is there any tag discussion, any items that you think we may have missed, or anything you want to go back and address?
Just to note that I think we're going over the natural light section and the energy storage system sections in more detail at a later time.
Yeah, so we have a proposal in on the energy storage systems from Ken Brulette, and I believe the natural light I have to go back and review some notes. I don't have that one at the top of my recollection what the specific changes are, but we are definitely looking at the natural light stuff because it's been kind of revamped and combined with some other sections.
Would you have a proposal for that? Is that part of our existing amendments?
Let me just see if I can find that real quick.
I think both for ESS.
Yes.
Do you want to change anything in this report, Mariko?
No, not myself, no.
Just want to highlight those. Any additional tag discussion? All right, is there anyone from the public that would like to discuss chapter 3? Okay. 8 minutes left. Do we want to try going through chapter 4 until we hit noon?
I don't think we'll get I think in this one we have a few more. I don't think we'll get through it, but if we want to start and then pick it up in the middle, the next meeting we can.
Unless there's any objection, I say let's do that. Let's use the 8 minutes.
Okay. So chapter 4 for foundations. So for this one, we have an existing state amendment recommendation to modify the existing amendment just to bring in this crushed stone footings for cast in place concrete foundations to the existing amendment. The ICC code change indicates it'll be a decrease in cost for this particular amendment.
Looks like there's quite a few cost decreases in here.
Yeah, well, like as we're running through here, these are all the crushed stone footings. So all these changes that go along with the crushed stone footings, they're allowing the application of those a little bit more broadly. And with that, it comes a decrease in the cost. And that is actually the end of chapter 4.
Excellent. Any additional discussion from tag members on chapter 4? All right, anything from the public? Ron, do you have something?
Nope, I was just getting ready to check in before we check out.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, I think we're good with chapter 4. Want to try
Alright.
getting through a few minutes of chapter 5?
Let's try.
More
Like I
cost
said,
decreases.
chapter 3 was by far the largest one. Well, it probably occupies the most changes, but the largest one on the sheet's probably the reference standards one. There's a lot of updates there. For exterior decks, we have an existing amendment here recommending to modify and incorporate the new language into the existing amendment.
Okay.
And we had talked about exterior decks and some of the tables and stuff, so there may be some movement here as a result of some of the existing amendment changes. But we'll rely on the recommendations coming through on the existing amendment report to guide that.
Okay.
And that's chapter 5.
All right. Awesome. We're making quick work of it. Any additional discussion from TAG members on chapter 5?
I have a quick question. Do we know what the vapor mill underneath the slab was up above? You passed over it.
I believe that they let you, they reduced the mill on that one. I remember reading that
I
one.
think it's
Did they get back to 6?
6 mil.
Yes,
Okay.
it went back to 6 from, it was 8, was it not? I believe in the previous version.
12 is what I heard, and so they were asking if they could double up the 6, and I didn't have a good answer to that, to be honest with you. But my understanding, the larger mill requirement was a really expensive product compared to the 6 mil, so they were happy to double it. 10 mil, that's what it was. There you go.
Yeah.
And in the code change report, they are saying that the 10 mil is more suited for the commercial / industrial buildings application. So, yeah.
Perfect. We don't cover the IRC, but you'd be amazed at how many IRC questions we get at the energy code, right? So this is, and this was a big one for some of the builders. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional discussion from the TAG on chapter 5? Okay. Any discussion from members of the public? Okay. With that, we got 2 minutes left. Can I get a motion to postpone this report until our next meeting?
So moved.
Can I
I'll
get a
second.
All right, awesome. We have a motion to postpone this report until our next meeting. It's been seconded. Is there any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, the motion carries.
Right. Well, I think we made spectacular progress on these reports today. And coming back next week, or not next week, next meeting, sorry. Jen will be looking at the sleeping lofts stuff for that in the existing amendments, and then we'll pick up into the the significant changes report after we can run over that stuff, since you won't be available for Tuesday, the following meeting.
All right. I also will not be able to attend the next Tuesday meeting.
Okay. Maybe we can shoot out a poll on that one, see who all's available. If there's risk of no quorum at that meeting, maybe we can take the opportunity to draft some of our proposals that we've got working right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll shoot out a poll for next Tuesday's meeting and see what it looks like, and then if nothing else, we'll see everybody
And
Thursday.
then you're gonna send out the
Proposal sheet?
template. Yeah, so that people can
Yes.
send in their stuff on that.
And next Tuesday's date is
I believe it's 12th.
8/12.
All right. Do we have I guess do we need to go through the other agenda items? I guess we'll want to postpone the proposals from the public till next meeting.
Yes. Maybe, I guess, as we already voted on it, but maybe another motion's in order for tabling the rest of the agenda till next meeting.
Sure. Can I get a motion to postpone the remaining agenda items till the next meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, great. We have a motion to postpone the remaining agenda items until the next meeting. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Make good work of it. And I think with that, we can adjourn.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.